Well, it's desperate news, as I was travelling home last night after the show to hear that Charlie Kirk had died. I'd known him for 10 years. I'd spent a lot of time with him. I'd spoken at Turning Point conferences. I rarely went to Mar-a-Lago when Charlie wasn't around or somewhere on the scene. So, yeah, you know, personally, I felt it very, very strongly indeed. And he was, without doubt, the most dynamic young Republican in America, had a following of many, many millions. And indeed, his following in this country was increasing, especially after his performance at the Oxford Union last month. He knew the dangers of not having sensible debate. And here he was, and you'll see this clip, and it is, I think, somewhat prophetic.
I go around universities and have challenging conversations, and because that's what is so important to our country, is to find our disagreements respectfully, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
I've never seen someone do this.
Well, it's a growing trend because people like me are facing violence, assaults. The left. Yes, the campus Antifa. I've been stormed out of restaurants. I've been assaulted publicly, multiple death threats.
Okay, so what's your goal in all this?
There's more people that agree with me than some people would actually believe, and they come out of the woodwork when I do stuff like this. We record all of it so that we put it on the internet so people can see these ideas collide. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens.
Well, there was Charlie, aware very much of the danger that he was in. And he mentioned Antifa there, a violent organisation who, for some reason, are allowed to operate in this country wearing masks. It's quite beyond me why that's the case. So the shooter, what do we know? Well, we're told, intelligence tells us that the shooter was linked to Antifa and had a very different view on trans rights to Charlie Kirk. This is a picture of the suspect. The FBI have released this picture and put up a $100,000 reward for anybody giving information that leads to an arrest. Now, the reactions have been many and varied. President Trump, who clearly was quite emotionally touched by this, he was very close to Charlie Kirk, has announced today that posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom will be given. But it seems that some on the left, even when somebody has been assassinated, can't say a single nice thing. Here was author Nels Abbey on ITV at breakfast this morning.
Yeah. Can I just say something? I don't agree it was a Cicero for the TikTok age. I believe it was a David Duke for the TikTok age. And I have some degree...
Can you just remind us who David Duke
was?
Is?
The former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, I mean, absolutely appalling. You know, he's comparing someone who's just been murdered to the leader of the Ku Klux Klan. The same in the European Parliament. They were in session today. They were asked for a minute's silence. Have a look at the reaction.
Rhetoric that incites violence. Please stand with me in reflection and prayer in his honor, and I yield the rest of my time for a moment of silence.
Herr Kollege Reimers, Sie haben angesprochen, Sie wissen, dass die Präsidentin hat eine Schweigeminute abgelehnt. Wir fahren weiter fort. Wir kommen zum Bericht von Herrn
Shut up! A minute's silence for someone who'd been murdered, interrupted by booing and jeering. I spoke in the House of Commons today and I said, look, you know, it is really important, imperative that all of us in public life use sensible language. Don't use endless historical analogies. Don't say things that can genuinely be insightful. I spoke about this across the spectrum, but it does strike me that there are some on the hard left who just, frankly, couldn't care less about what they do. They believe they have a moral superiority. Will anything change after the death of Charlie Kirk? I don't think so. Maybe you disagree with me. Tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I'm joined in the studio by Elizabeth Pipko, former Republican Party spokesman and a friend like myself of now the late Charlie Kirk. I'm joined by Lord Maurice Glasman, regular on this show, as of course is Sir Michael Ellis, former Attorney General. But first, I'm going to go down the line to Michael Knowles, host of the Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire. Michael, I was just talking there about the mixed reactions. You know, the President clearly very moved by the death of Charlie Kirk. But it seems some on the left, even though the man's dead, can't say a nice word.
And not merely on social media. If you look at the left-wing cable news outlets, the response does not merit, frankly, even discussion as far as I'm concerned today. It's so appalling. But it without question reflects that they have not taken a good lesson from this. I think everyone has concluded that this event is hitting them much more strongly than they might have expected. You know, for us, he was a personal friend of ours of many years. For many, many millions of people, they were admirers of him, and he had many enemies too. And one thing that all of us seem to agree on is that this guy would have been president. There is no exaggeration to say that he is the most significant political figure of our generation. And he had a bright, bright future ahead of him. At least we thought so. But of course, one is not guaranteed another day. And what was so astounding about his significance is he didn't hold public office. He never held public office. We all expected him to hold the highest office, and yet he had greater influence than any actual office holder, other than perhaps the president of the United States. He was extraordinarily effective, and they killed him. And this, I think, is where something will change. And I don't know if it will change for the better. It might change for the worse. So, of course, we hope it will be for the better. But this guy did not pass laws. He did not hold office. He did not wield concrete political power. He showed up to public spaces to talk it out. That's all he wanted to do, was debate and talk it out in an extraordinarily gracious and generous way. There was no more mainstream and generous person in public life. And they killed him for it. And I think that deep sense of injustice strikes us, and a deep sense of dread, because in a battle, whether we're talking about a physical battle or a rhetorical battle, one's opponents get a say. And if Charlie's opponents will not tolerate talking out ideas and having a respectful debate, then what comes next is frightening.
Yeah, I'm frightened by it too. Michael, beautifully put. Thank you for joining us live down the line. Well, Elizabeth, you knew Charlie. I mean, it is desperately sad, but it's, you know, and there were some, and let's be fair, you know, the abuse goes both ways. There were some saying there needs to be retribution for this. So there were people on the right behaving appallingly, some of them this morning. America feels in a very bad place.
I agree. I think America's been in a bad place for some time, honestly, and I think people like Charlie Kirk were at the forefront of pointing that out. That's almost why this is even more painful. He was there from day one saying we need to have these conversations because if we stop, that's when we have the violence. He was warning not the Republican side, but also the other side. Everybody. He was one of very few people on our side who wanted to have those conversations. I know a lot of people, influencers, media commentators, even politicians who don't want to talk to those who disagree with them. Charlie wanted to. He liked it. He enjoyed it. He knew what could come of that, the benefit that can come of that. And I think that's why it hurts so much. He was one of the few that was willing to have those conversations, and they killed him anyway.
You see, I mean, the old Republican Party, the sort of Mitt Romney Republican Party, was doing terribly with young voters. Yes. Doing terribly with people of sort of Hispanic backgrounds. And I do feel, I mean, Trump was different, he was fresh, but I do feel that Charlie actually, I mean, as was said there by Michael Knowles, it's astonishing to think that somebody who'd never held elected office, was only 31 years old, is being talked about in this way. But he was really important, wasn't he?
He was extremely important, more so probably than politicians, because he wasn't one of them, because he proved that without getting elected, you can still sway people's minds. You can go on the internet in 2025, just tell your personal
story.
Build an audience, sway voters, encourage young people to get closer to God, to build families, to change their political opinions. Who can do that in 2025? It's actually not politicians. It's individuals like Charlie. It's very interesting,
isn't it? Morris, you know, this is not the first time we've seen these things. We've had MPs killed, of course, in our country. You know, we had in the 60s a spate of assassinations in America. We even in this country today, a Labour MP's office in Sunderland was completely burned out. But somehow this incident has become really very, very big and made us all thoughtful, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and I extend my sympathies to you, Nigel, and to you, Elizabeth. I didn't know him, so... Yeah. And the fact that he had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old child, this is horrid. It's really horrid. And, you know, it speaks to a problem on my side. I'm from the left completely. And there's an aspect, Antifa, I would say, are the opposite. They are fascist. They want to use violence, you know, and they do use violence to intimidate, to threaten, all of this, and America obviously has the guns. Look, we're blessed, Nigel, with our country. We don't have guns. But
well, you can get guns.
Yeah, but in America, there's this undercurrent, and what he was doing, as you said, this is the point. He was full of faith. He was full of ideas. He was full of how to engage. It's a great relief that he had that faith, because I think his wife can at least take comfort in eternal glory.
Something. Yeah.
But this is absolutely out of order. And what you said earlier, this reluctance to engage, to denounce others before you've started talking. I mean, I get completely slaughtered, for coming on here and talk. I know. This is just the reality, and I do it as a point of honour and a point of principle, that there can be no future for a country that can't engage in the conversation.
Those sound words, Mike.
I agree completely. And of course, I think this is a generational moment, and not in a good way. You alluded, Nigel, to the 1960s, and this reminds me on the arc of history of the Bobby Kennedy assassination, in the sense that at that moment felt for the left of that era in the late 1960s as though there was a generational loss of a leader for them, and it was an iconic moment. Here, I think, there's a generational loss of a future leader for the right in America. And that's why I think this is such a significant moment. He was only 31 years of age, had a young family, but he'd made such a powerful impact. He was clearly a highly charismatic young man, but actually he had proven his worth to millions of followers. To have had his life extinguished in this horrific, violent, public way, it's the exact opposite of what he was standing for, because what he stood for, going to these campuses, and he went to Oxford as well, I think Cambridge as well,
he was there,
last month. What he particularly wanted to focus on was tolerance of other people's views, is my understanding. He wanted to listen to other people's views.
He wanted to have vigorous debate.
And debate them. Whereas so much at the moment is an intolerance for other people's views. And it's like, I don't want to hear it, you're obnoxious, you're a fascist, if you don't agree with me, you're evil.
And it was interesting, Elizabeth, because he went for the universities, and that actually is where much of this intolerance has been taught over the course of the last couple of decades. So he was actually very brave, and he was giving other students the ability to stand up and speak freely and engage in debate. He really was fighting back against the woke mind virus in so many ways. Is there anyone that can fill his place?
I mean, honestly, no. No one will ever beat Charlie Kirk. I mean, truly, he deserves all the credit in the world, and he should be spoken of as if he was this individual that will never be replaced, because he won't be. At the same time, people will follow in his footsteps. They will hopefully be more likely to listen to his words now, maybe after he's gone, than they were otherwise. I know a lot of people on the left who reached out to me and actually said decent things and said, I'm going to watch a Charlie Kirk clip for the first time. I had a friend who told me I'm going to read the Constitution for the first time.
Yeah, that's good.
That's something good. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes the best people are only appreciated once they're gone.
Yeah.
I think it's an iconic moment.
Yeah, no, it really, really is. Well, it has overshadowed a very big political story, which is that Mandy's gone.